Postmodern Art Podcast, the podcast dedicated to giving artists who are wowing the world over the platform they deserve. I am your host, Nathan Ragland, and would the next guest come on down? Today's guest is Christian Carrion, a 6-time game show contestant and game show expert who recently released the audio documentary Auld Lang Gone about a Lost Carmen Sandiego episode. He is also the host of a podcast called Stranger Than Christian, part of the Apocalypse Podcast Network, and my personal favorite podcast. Just saying, just adding it, you know. This was honestly one of the best conversations I've ever had on this podcast. One that I will truly cherish and enjoy listening back over and over again. And I hope you guys enjoy as much as I did. Make sure you go support Christian. All the links down in the description below. You can support the podcast by liking, sharing, subscribing, or following on whatever streaming platform you prefer. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. That really does help me out. Like, really. If you want to go further with that support, you should go to the merch shop at pmap.creator-spring.com, to where you can see a wide range of amazing items done by some amazing artists to provide some cool streetwear for you. Also, hey, since this is a part of the Apocalypse Podcast Network, and Stranger Than Christian is part of the Apocalypse Podcast Network, maybe you guys should further discuss the Apocalypse Podcast Network by going to the Apocalypse Podcast Network Discord server, to where you can talk about this podcast and other outstanding ones in the network. In fact, let's hear about a completely different, phenomenal program on the Apocalypse Podcast Network.
Art and entertainment inspire each of us in different ways, but have you ever wondered what inspires the people who create our cultural touchstones? I'm Adam Unz, and on the Spark Parade podcast, I geek out with artists and entertainers about their cultural spark of inspiration. Everything from Shakespeare to South Park. You'll hear from artists like Connor Oberst on Northern Exposure, Roisin Murphy on Terrence Conran's The Housebook, and Adrian Young on Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. The Spark Parade, where artists reveal their cultural inspirations to spark the inspiration in you. Find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And now, without further ado, please enjoy the Postmodern Art Podcast.
Hey, Nathan, can you hear me?
I can hear you wonderfully.
Beautiful.
There you go. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. This is weird from the other side.
I know, right?
Holy shit. Are we recording right now?
I am recording on my end, so I mean, it's one of those...
Okay, I am too. I'm just going to open my soda. I'm opening my soda away from my microphone.
Beautiful, beautiful. I was going to say, usually cool. What was I going to say? Usually I record this little like intro bit, kind of a little bit of chit chat before the actual like questions and stuff, just to kind of ease the audience into whatever conversation is about to happen.
All right, good. I like that. I like that. A nice normal chat before we get down to business.
Exactly.
How's that? Does that sound any better?
Oh, that sounds a lot
better.
There
we go.
Lovely.
Beautiful. Whoops. All right, cool.
There we go. Don't just love technical difficulties when they happen?
Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing.
I already told you my story about, you know, how I butchered audio atrociously with a guest before, so yeah.
Are you kidding me? I'm still butchering audio. Listen, last week I thought it'd be cool to like record my intro from my couch because I'm so tired from doing so much stuff, and it's gonna sound really cool and really edgy. Meanwhile, I'm popping every fucking syllable I'm saying, and like. I sound like a fucking TikTok interviewer. You know how they go on the beach and they just use their phone to like interview people?
Right.
I sound like a jerk.
I thought it was, you know, a nice casual vibe more than anything else.
Oh, well, good. You were the one.
Oh, I was the one.
Listen to it. This is what I do because I'm psychotic. I listen to my episodes either on the way home from work or on the way to work just to make sure it sounds okay. And I heard it, I went, holy God, this sounds like crap.
Well, to be fair, I usually listen to my own podcast the day I release them, like going back to it, and then like I listen to them like, oh crap, I forgot something. Oh, I did that. Oh, Jesus. Oh,
but don't you hate that feeling? I hate that feeling. I hate when I'm out listening to it and I realize like something is out of place or something I should have taken something out, and I just have to go through the whole day until I get home, and you know what I mean? I have to like live with that guilt. Like I put bad art into the world.
No, so let me tell you
What have
this.
I done?
Let me tell you this. There was a guest that I had on a while back. The guy's name is David De Pasquale. He is a character designer for the movie Arlo the Alligator Boy, if you've even seen that or whatnot.
No, I haven't, but I want to. That sounds great.
It was a great interview, but the thing was, whenever I would record the interview, it was like a good couple weeks back before the follow-up series, I Heart Arlo, was to be released on Netflix and such. So I made sure to tell the guests, like, between my intro or between the intro or whatnot, hey, I'm going to say that the thing's coming out tomorrow. I just don't want you to be, taken away from that or whatnot. I'm going to edit this little bit out. I forgot to edit that out, Christian.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
So it's like, are you good with the answer? Is that, are you gonna, die on that hill or whatnot? Hey, by the way, I'm gonna take this out. Anyways, let's welcome to.
See, and that's one of the things, like, and this wasn't by design, but like the way I do my show, I always say, like, it's about like a natural conversation, because
Right.
sometimes things go wrong and sometimes, things happen and you got to like work around it and stuff. Really, the opposite of that is I don't have to edit much of anything, which is pretty cool. There was once I was talking to somebody I think she was from Argentina. And in the middle of this conversation, she's talking about her job. She works in like foreign currency exchange, and so she's up at the ass crack of dawn to like be up on all the financial stuff. In the middle of this conversation, I hear my cat scratching at the door, and I realize, holy shit, I forgot to feed the cat. And so I said, Sabrina, excuse me for a minute. And I opened the door and I pet the cat and I asked my wife to feed the cat and I left it in. And someone on Reddit that week was like, dude, you left in that thing with your cat? And I was like, yeah. Listen, I'm not at a fucking studio. This is my home. I'm in a closet. I own cats.
There you go. I actually remember you talking about that on a previous episode of your podcast as well.
Yeah, once you've been in this for long enough, you start to repeat stories.
You know what? I am not actually surprised by that because I do that way more often than I'd like to admit.
It's the showmanship. If a story works, it works.
Absolutely. Especially if it's, it's a captivating one, if nothing else. And it's always interesting to hear, like, and it always gets the mind going of like, well, what if you were put in that situation? Goodness, or if I was put in that situation, I don't know what I'd do. I would just have to leave it in.
Yeah, I mean, my rule, honestly, when it comes to my shit is like, when in doubt, I'm leaving it in.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Listen, if something big and professional was going to come from this, it would have happened already. At this point, I'm doing this for myself. I'm creating something that years from now, I'll look back and I go, wow, that was really, really cool. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I think.
Or like, it's more for me than anything else. Yeah.
No, absolutely. All right, Christian, before we really get going, I want to ask the icebreaker question that I've been asking recently. Let's say that you get the opportunity to go to a desert island. It is just you, nothing else, except you get the opportunity to bring one piece of media or one piece of art with you to make sure you don't go completely insane on the island. What is that one piece you bring with you?
Oh, man, a Nintendo 3DS.
Ooh.
Without a doubt, that is what I'm bringing. I spent a lot of time. So I've worked in hospitality in the hotel industry for like 6 years, which I'm sure you know because you listen to the show.
Absolutely.
And a year and a half of that I spent working overnight. And I got really bored on these shifts. I would work, Saturday night would be cool because there was like a wedding and the open bar and all that.
Right.
Oh, excuse me. Open bar and all that. It was always, some kind of adventure. But like Sunday night, Monday night was like such a drag. And so I picked myself up a Game Boy and I picked up a copy of Tetris. Mm-hmm. And not long after that, my wife bought me my first 3DS for my birthday. Oh, and that got me back into handheld gaming, like portable gaming. And I realized how much comfort I derived from like just being able to play a game of Tetris everywhere I go. You know what I mean? Like I'm never bored. It's always fun. I just love having that kind of thing on me. And Tetris has gotten me through so much in my life, believe it or not. It's helped me in terms of my organizational skills. It's helped me in terms of, it helps with depression. It helps with anxiety, just so many things. I owe a lot of my personal growth to Tetris. So that would be the thing that I bring with me.
I mean, I can certainly understand, like, even though it gives the appearance of like a very simple game, like, honestly, like, if you take the time with all the different skills that you're talking about, I can only imagine how much it can elevate a person when they take the time to really dedicate themselves to it, more or less.
Oh, totally. And one of the really beneficial things about Tetris is that in the course of the game, what it is a decision after a decision after a decision, just one after the other. And you're able to immediately see the effect of that decision. And it's a really mentally satisfying activity. Yeah, man, I owe so much of, again, just like my personal growth and my progression as just trying to be a good human. I play an hour of Tetris a day, and I do not regret it. It is such, and editing audio does the same thing for me. Where it's like, you get the pieces, you get the blocks, and you got to stack them in the right order, and it's immensely satisfying.
You know what? Because it's both audio and like just video editing. Because obviously I do a video version with this podcast, where I know exactly what you're talking about, and it makes a little too much sense. So yeah, yeah, wow. I should probably play some more Tetris.
It helps, man. I'm telling you, it helps.
All right then. But nevertheless, bringing a 3DS with probably Tetris on it, is that your answer? Are you locking that in?
That's my answer. I have a couple of qualifying questions. Where am I charging it? Is there electricity on this island?
Well, of course. Like I said, any way that you'd be able to keep using it on this deserted island, you have that with you.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, then totally a DS. Yeah.
There you go. That's your answer.
Definitely. And so I'll bring my DS, and I'll have the YouTube app installed. And every month or so, I'll ask for supplies to be sent to the island.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Then if that's the case, if that's the answer you're locking in, then congratulations, Christian. You've won a trip to the Postmodern Art Podcast. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Nathan Ragland. Feel free to subscribe or follow whatever streaming platform you prefer. I'm a part of the Apocalypse Podcast Network. Go to apocalypsepodcastnetwork.com for more about this podcast and other outstanding ones in the network. And follow us on Twitter and Instagram at PostmodArtPod for future updates and guest announcements, including today's guest. He is a game show enthusiast with several appearances on them, a collaborator on Buzzard Blog, an advocate of lost media, the host of the podcast Stranger Than Christian, which is also on the Apocalypse Podcast Network, from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the podcast, Christian Carrion!
Nathan, I'm not going to lie, your intro made me tingle. Thank you so much. Oh, boy.
You don't know how much I appreciate that, because I put a lot of time to think of a solid, make sure I give you the proper platform that I think you deserve, because Christian, you deserve it.
Listen, I don't even think I'm worthy of that intro, but thank you very much. Good Lord, I love it.
Well, I'm glad I can really get this conversation going, but before we really go forward with, a lot of different aspects, I want to go back just a little bit. I want to know more or less the origin story of Christian. What got you interested in art and entertainment in the first place?
I am a child of television. So my dad, Alfred Carrion, he is a professional artist. He's been an artist at this point for just about most of his adult life. He went to New York University. He was a high school art teacher when I was born, and he would be out Monday through Friday before I started going to school, and I was home with my mom, and my mom watched a lot of daytime TV, and a lot of daytime TV in the early 90s was game show reruns. Not only reruns, but new ones. I mean, these days, you have The Price is Right, you have Let's Make a Deal, but there aren't many brand new game shows on in daytime. But that's the stuff I was raised on, man. And something about them just drew my attention. I don't know if it was the music or the lights or just the fact that, these are people playing games on TV. I've always loved games. I've always loved word games and puzzles and things. And so I really grew up in a really cool set of creative circumstances. I mean, there was always art around the house. My dad's studio was always, within an arm's reach. I always grew up around paintings and going to little wine and cheese events and art shows and exhibits. And, my dad had these really eccentric friends who, also created. And so the idea of creating things that, that make people talk and make people look, I grew up around that. And so, everything I've done in my life from that point on has been with the goal of existing in that space. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've always wanted to make things that make people happy, make people talk, make people think, make people listen. And I've always tried to exist in that way as well. I love public speaking. I love, I'm a natural showman. I'm a natural ham. And so Yeah, man, that's where I'm coming from, and that's really, again, the reason behind just about everything I do, including the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, trust me, as someone that is an avid listener of your podcast, and I'll definitely divulge more to that later. I can, I can only imagine just kind of the stuff you grew up around and the experiences that you have with like your father and such. I know one of the biggest opportunities that you've actually had being around art was when your father had a local access TV show, Mr. Fred's Palette. How did this even come to be, and how did you get involved with it?
Listen, I tell people about this even to this day, and it's so unbelievable that a kid that age would have access to a TV station, a TV studio, a full featured TV studio, like a control room and everything.
Right.
You know, Citizens Television in New Haven, Connecticut. That going to CTV and taking that 8-week class with my dad and learning everything there was to know about television production was a turning point in my life because kids grow up liking sports. They never get to go to the Super Bowl. Kids grow up liking space. They never get to go to the moon. They never get to go to NASA. I grew up loving TV, and before I was even a teenager, I had experience in a television studio.
Right.
And I'm so thankful that my dad was there. Somebody that I trust, the smartest person I know, was there to guide me through it. To guide me through that. And he was learning with me. My dad had this idea to do a sort of, I look back on it and it was like a sort of Mr. Rogers type thing, but a more urban flair to it. Mm-hmm. My dad is from New York. My whole family is from New York. I was the first generation born in Connecticut. And a lot of his art and a lot of his attitude, even outside of his art, was just informed by his upbringing. I mean, he grew up on the streets. My dad was homeless from ages 14 to 18. Made a friend who got him into NYU against all odds in the world, and I mean he was able to flip it around. But he had this idea of an art instructional show that came from that angle. It was very real. It was very unprocessed. It was very unedited. And, my dad had experience as a teacher. He had been a teacher for 20 years at that point. And it's just something he really wanted to do. We found out about CTV, and they had this 8-week course. If you take the 8-week course, you become a certified television producer, and you can do your own show. And everybody was volunteer. All the camera operators, all the directors, all the producers were volunteer. We were lucky enough to have our studio across from one of the best pizza places in New Haven, and by extension, one of the best pizza places in America, Modern Pizza, because New Haven gets voted best pizza in America like year after year after year. And that was the payment for the crew. If you needed camera operators and stuff, you just get a couple pizzas in Modern and you have the television crew. But just being able to spend time around all that equipment, to play with the TV cameras and to sit in the director's chair and hit all the buttons in the control room just to find out what they do. I will never forget how fortunate I am to have had that experience, and it really allowed me to enjoy this thing that my life is made up of. Again, I was raised on TV. It allowed me to enjoy television in a much different way. Even to this day, I feel like I have a different point of view on a lot of the things I see on TV.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. I feel the same way when it comes to filmmaking, because I went to college to be a filmmaker, and now I'm like looking at films, and as much as I enjoy a lot of them, like there are some where I could just critique every little bit, or like think, okay, I see what they did there, I can understand how they do that. Like it changes the experience.
Sure, because you see it from a creator's point of view.
Right, exactly. It's one of those like it's both been a blessing and a curse to know what goes on behind the scenes now.
Yeah. What kind of films did you want to make? I don't think you were on my show,
yes,
and I don't think I ever asked you that. What kind of films did you want to make?
Well, you see, that's the thing, Christian. I don't really want to like dedicate myself to a specific genre or something along the lines of that. Like, if I'm going to make a film, I want the story to be good, whether like going for the goal of what it's trying to go for. Like, on one hand, I made a very serious film about suicide because I wanted to talk about how It's not just always the people that are in the worst situations. Sometimes it's people that are in amazing situations, but they can't handle it. On the flip side, I had a short film about a person who just randomly gets the ability to shapeshift and in goofy ways tries to figure out how to be a shapeshifter. You know, like, as long as the story is good for me, that's something I always enjoy when it comes to filmmaking. So.
Oh, but that's a great way to be creative, though. Just whatever strikes your heart, right?
Exactly. And I imagine, you know, for you, you probably wanted the same instant whenever you actually got into like being a part of the television business, I guess, more or less. Was working on Mr. Fred's Palette kind of a moment for you to where it switched from just a love for television to a passion and wanting to make it your career?
Well, it was. And, you know, I never considered working behind the scenes to be my ultimate goal. You know, and I've mentioned this maybe a couple times on the podcast, but I'll tell you, Nathan, my lifelong dream has always been to be a game show host. That's what I've always wanted to be. Growing up watching that type of TV, I idolized those people. Not for what they like, not for who they were on TV, but I did, you know, I got older and I realized that I'm not sure I wanted to be a TV game show host so much as I wanted to be somebody who knew how to dress, who knew the right thing to say, who knew when to guide a conversation in a certain way, when to press for more, when to sense something was, you know, something funny was going to happen, and just have those sort of social skills. Right. And I realized that as I got older, you know, you romanticize the idea of what you want to be. You know, my wife wants to be on Saturday Night Live, and she thinks about it sometimes. And she looks at the current climate of TV, and does she really want to be on that Saturday Night Live? No, she wants to be on the one that she grew up watching. Right. And in the same way, I wanted to be the host of the shows that I grew up watching. They don't exist anymore. No. And after that's off the table, what's left is to find the base elements of that idea and apply them to your everyday life. So I got a job working at the front desk at a hotel. I get to wear a suit. I get to talk to people from all over the world. I get to give out free stuff once in a while. And in that, I found a lot of fulfillment. And then you combine that with the fact that I get to broadcast from my home every week and, you know, be the type of broadcaster that I want to be. Right. It just absolutely blows my mind. But I'm sorry, I got really far away from your question.
No, yes. Honestly, this is perfectly fine. I love like conversations that flow a million different directions. So you're right up the alley of what I'm looking for.
Okay, well, good. Well, to answer your question more directly, yes, that was definitely the first time I considered that I could do this for a living. And, you know, when you're 12, 13, 14 years old, doing something for a living isn't necessarily the first thing on your mind. Right. But, you know, you think about the future and think, wow, when I become an adult, I can do this. I can do, like, this can be my job. There are people in the world who make money doing this. And again, you know, being able to make art with my dad week after week after week and do it on our terms. I mean, Nathan, we used to mess stuff up on this show all the time. We used to, you know what I mean? We would accidentally let prank calls through. I'd switch to the wrong camera. I'd accidentally turn his microphone off. One time, my dad left his pack of Marbreds on the table, and I had to cut to another camera and run out and get rid of them for him. It was just very raw, and I realized that, you know, that is the type of entertainment and the type of TV that I've always enjoyed. I love behind the scenes. I love when TV doesn't know what to do. What are you going to do? You know what I mean? I love those, you know, unpredictable circumstances and how people on live TV work their way around them. And we got to make that. Oh, yeah. You know, and those experiences making Mr. Fred's Palette have really guided my creative energy from that point on. I mean, to this day, I feel like the podcast that I'm doing right now is just an extension, not an extension of that exact show, but an extension of that energy. I'm you know, in honor of those years that I had with my dad making that show, I'm able to do my own thing in my own way.
Right. I mean, you certainly encapsulated that, if I do say so, because I was able to see a few of the episodes of Mr. Fred's Pat when you had it on your Patreon. But it's incredible to just know that like that love, especially came from like a young age, and especially that experience with your dad, more or less. I've also like worked with my dad, but in a warehouse setting. But even then, like I know how the experience can be like. It can really change how an atmosphere can feel, especially when you're working in that kind of environment. Especially in the environment for the field that you wanted to work with, which was television, and obviously an extension of that being game shows. What is it about game shows that like drew you in? Do you know? Can you think back to what exactly drew you in about game shows?
Game shows are just meant to be fun. And I think that when you're a toddler sitting in front of a TV, you look for colorful things. You look for things that look fun. My first memories of TV in general are watching game shows with my mom. And, as I got older, I started to appreciate them as a very unique art form. I mean, game shows exist on their own in the spectrum of TV. There's nothing that looks like them. There's no talk show or no sitcom or anything else that looks like a game show. I mean, it is its own class. And getting older, realizing that there's a whole world of this stuff that I didn't know existed. Once the internet became a thing, once Game Show Network became a thing, just exploring and finding out new names and new shows. And oh my God, there are home versions of these games. I could buy a board game based on these shows. Holy shit. And then just, falling down that rabbit hole and, and getting even older, linking up with other people who had the same type of childhood, growing up watching game shows, meeting people, making lifelong friends, my best friend, Corey Annotato from Buzzer Blog, I met him online 15 years ago through the computer at my public library playing one of the game show games he made in Flash. Oh, wow. Fast forward, I'm the best man at his wedding.
Wow.
Just the connections that I've been able to make, not only in terms of friends, but then, but even talking about this documentary that I made about Carmen Sandiego, being able to converse and jump in a Zoom chat with the people I watched on TV growing up, and it all started just watching TV with my mom, and game shows just did it for me, man. And maybe it has something to do with the fact that it was regular people, it was everyday people, winning and being smart. It was cool to be smart. My parents always placed an emphasis in my early life on learning to read and learning to write. It was always very important. Mm-hmm. And seeing people celebrate those skills, and not only celebrate but reward those skills, I think attracted me as well. Just the fact that it's everyday people like me. I could do that. And then, by the grace of God, years later, I was able to do that a couple times. It's just unbelievable.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I got it wrong whenever I appeared on your show. 6 times you've been on a game show?
Oh, 6 times, Nathan. Six times. I've tried out for more than I've made it on. I've tried out for a lot of them.
I think that's probably the instant for any sort of like entertainment entity. You're always going to try out more than you're going to be appearing on one.
Did I ever tell you about the time I tried out for The Real World?
No, you did not. Okay.
I tried out for The Real World about 10 years ago. They had an open call back when I was living in New Haven, and it was at some nightclub, but they opened it during the day, like just to bring in people to interview them. And it was round table. They brought in 8 people at a time, and each person sort of explained their story. Mm-hmm. This one guy who sat next to me had this incredibly harrowing story about how he got his girlfriend pregnant, tried to abandon her, she found him, he's raising the kid, drugs, alcohol, money, no job, this, and that. After he finishes telling his story to the casting person, he gets up, takes his chair, puts it over his head, throws it against the wall, and smashes it through the wall, and leaves. Goodness. And everybody thinks, oh God, well, he's going to be a shoo-in for the show. The casting lady just took his application and ripped it up right on the spot.
Oh God. That's not real world material. That is its own separate like reality show material right there.
No, yeah, that's like Looney Bin material, man.
That sounds like an off-brand episode of like Intervention or something along the lines of that.
Right.
Goodness. it's interesting. I think you even said during my appearance on your podcast that like reality TV is definitely a whole different entity than game shows.
By the way, you were one of my favorite guests I have ever had on my show because you talk in the way that I wished everybody talked. Like, the show is about, whatever conversation happens, and that's great. And I don't want them to go any particular way. But there was an excitement about you when you were talking about the things that interested you, when you were talking about animation and the opportunities you've had to interview animators and people who've worked on movies and TV shows and Class of 3000. And, you were so excited about these things. And I feel like it really came through. I loved it. You were such a good guest on my show, Nathan.
Christian, that means more than the world to me to hear that. It really does. Because I was a nervous wreck the entire time I was on your podcast. I am not.
Why? But you listen to it. It's like no pressure.
Right. It should be like no pressure. But like for me, especially whenever I'm like nervous, like I stumble on my words a good bit and I overthink stuff and I say like and such, like way too many times. And like, I don't know what it was, but like, listening to you and actually getting to talk to you for me was like two mental planes, but like I tried to keep myself as level as possible because I knew at the end of the day, just like you said whenever I told you about meeting obviously the director of Class of 3000, Joe Horn, like whenever I get the opportunity to finally talk to someone that I can't get enough of and I truly cherish it gets that realization that you're both on this bitch more or less, and it's incredible to know that you're both here on the evil playing field more or less.
I guess it is kind of surreal, and I appreciate you saying that about my little show. Thank you very much. But I had that experience again making the Carmen documentary.
Right.
You realize that at the end of the day, yeah, you're both on the same plane of existence right now.
Yeah, no, trust me.
It's unbelievable.
We'll definitely divulge a lot more into that, trust me. But I did want to go back just a little bit with some of the game shows that you've appeared on or whatnot. What would you say personally out of all the appearances was like your best like experience? Because I think I already know, but I want to hear from the words of the man himself. What would you say is the best experience on a game show you've had?
I usually joke around and I say whichever one paid me the most recently is my favorite.
Fair.
Honestly, like when I think about all of them, I mean, The Price is Right. When I went for my 18th birthday,
right.
Like that's what I wanted. So Bob Barker announced his retirement in October of 2006, and he did his last show in the beginning of June of 2007. My birthday was May 9th. And so I told my parents, all I need is the airfare. I know everything there is to know about getting there, what I need to do to get in there, maybe get on the show, but I need to see this guy before he retires because he's not going to do this again. There's not going to be a guy like this again. This is the last really great game show host, and I need to go to Hollywood. I need to see this. And so for my birthday, they got me the airfare, and I got on the plane by myself for the first time in my whole life. I walked from the corner of like Pico and La Brea in Los Angeles. I walked past MySpace headquarters. I walked about 4 miles to CBS, and I just sat on the street, and I sat there for 3 days, and I was first in line out of 3,000 people, and I made it in, and I got on the show. That has to have been my favorite experience because I had never experienced. That was my first time seeing a game show live.
Right.
And that, if fucking CTV was like a paradigm shift for me, being able to go to CBS in Hollywood and see the show and be on the show and shake the guy's hand and spin the wheel, like it just absolutely blew my mind. Going to see that show was the closest thing to a truly religious experience I had ever had. You go into this room and like, man, it's even hard to describe. It's like you think about your favorite artist and you think about visiting the studio where they painted their masterpiece.
Right.
And you just get to like walk in there and see all the stuff that creative experience is made up of. And something, Nathan, like pulled me, man. Like I was the first one to walk into the studio when they let the audience in, and everything just washed over me. Something pulled me up to the stage, and I went up the stairs and I just laid on my back in the middle of the floor of the stage and just stretched my arms out and stretched my legs out. And I like felt the energy of the floor like pulsing through me. I felt like I was absorbing everything I had ever seen that took place in this room was just like passing through me. It was I'm telling you, man, the closest thing to like an emotional experience I've ever had.
I can only imagine. I was gonna say it was either gonna be that or the fact that you got to meet one of your like heroes or one of the legends growing up with Biz Markie on Hollywood Squares. I thought that would have been up there.
Oh, that's definitely up there, but that's like in a different way. Like Biz Markie, and I'm sure we'll talk about hip hop at some point because that is an enormous part of my life. But yeah, that was definitely an experience. I can. Oh, I hear your dog.
There's one of them.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's okay. Yeah, man, that was definitely an experience. Yeah, just he's one of those people. I mean, there are people in your life that like you never think you'll meet.
Right.
They exist in your headphones and they exist, as you hear them on your iPod or whatever. I had an iPod back in the day.
Right.
But being able to meet them was unbelievable. Yeah, man, that Price is Right experience was like, dude, I'll never forget that. I'll never. I have such vivid memories of that day, and they will never go away.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Words are wonderful. I had it, then I lost it.
You're doing great.
No,
You're
I know.
great.
This happens to be way more often than I'd like to admit. No.
Me too.
There you go.
Like honestly, it's been like 80 episodes. It still happens to me. I still lose my words. I still stutter. I still stammer over myself sometimes. It's just part of being human, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Jesus. No, absolutely. Just part of being human, especially getting all these incredible experiences like you were talking about with the game shows and such. And obviously you said yourself, some of the game shows when you were growing up aren't the same game shows as today, but I have to know, because you can correct me on this. I think there's a true art form when it comes to a good game show, more or less, just like encapsulating and such. So for you, in your opinion, what makes a game show, like, what's the difference between like a good game show and a bad game show, in your opinion?
Well, see, I could talk about this for hours. So when it comes to a good or bad game show, I mean, clearly a good game show is like one you can play along with. Right. So they're really simple games that are presented in an accessible way. They look fun, they sound fun, they get you engaged as a viewer, they get you engaged as a participant. So, shows like Wheel of Fortune, I mean, you can't walk by a TV with Wheel of Fortune on it and not try to solve the puzzle when you see it. Right. That is like it's the ultimate in terms of like that play along factor. Oh. So, I mean, that's clearly an element of like a good game show. And bad game shows are complicated and not very fun and unfair and, all of those things. I feel like I have a different perspective on this question because I've seen so many game shows from the past 40 years or so. Right. So there are good game shows that in my mind are good in their presentation. It's a good show. You know what I mean? But the game itself might not be. There was a show in the mid 70s. Oh, excuse me.
Are you good?
I burped right in my fucking microphone. See that?
I heard it. Trust me.
Yeah,
anyways,
80 fucking episodes. I still burp in my fucking microphone.
There's no shame in that.
God damn it. Leave this in. Please leave this in.
No, trust me. I intended
This is Nathan's reminder to not cut this out. Nathan, you're listening to this episode right now. Don't cut this shit out, man.
No, you'll understand. I'm going to be hearing this like when I'm listening back to it like at work after it's already been released and everything, okay? Good. Well, just when you're listening to it, just remember this is part of it now. Okay.
Christian burped into the fucking microphone.
Anyways, you were saying that there was a game show back in the 70s that I assume you had like a great presentation.
Right. So like there are good game shows that are like not good games, but they're incredible shows. There was a show in the mid 70s called The Money Maze. Ooh. The Money Maze was on ABC in the daytime, Monday through Friday. It was hosted by George Clooney's dad. Oh, okay. And the centerpiece of the Money Maze was this 50 by 50 foot maze. And they had two married couples. One of them would be on stage answering questions. The other one would be in the maze. The walls were, 7 feet high. Goodness. And throughout the course of the game, they would run around and try to find prizes in the maze. And the game itself, kind of weak, but as a show, mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. The show took 2 days to set up for a taping. It took 1 day to break down. They had to put up this 50 by 50 foot maze, twice a week, every week for however long the show was on. One of the people who worked on the show said that was the only show where the crew took home more money than the contestants with all the overtime and all that for for building it. But shows like that are like, clearly not well remembered, but they're just incredible. Like, you talk about TV as an art form. I mean, the mid 70s was a peak for that type of entertainment. In 1975, there were something like 39 different game shows on the air that you could watch in the course of a week. Like, that was the type of TV back then. And, it's just like the music, and you have these like swirling lights, and, even the set design with all the shag carpet and orange and green, and, it was just that type of show doesn't exist anymore. But that is, if you talk about game shows as art, that's a definite moment in time where everything looked like that and everything sounded like that.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, like today it'd be considered nostalgic, but like back then that was the style of the time, like.
It really was. And TV is the type of thing where if one thing is successful, if one show or one look is successful, all the other ones copy from it, which is why, you get reality shows where everything kind of looks and functions the same. You get a lot of shows after Who Wants to Be a Millionaire came out, which was like an incredibly influential show back in the early 2000s. Everything had these, black shiny floors and dramatic music and, big spotlights and all that. Like that was a whole aesthetic. The 70s was just like that. If you ever get a chance, and maybe I'll send you a couple links so you could understand what I mean. But like, mid-70s game shows have this like hypnotic, almost psychedelic quality to them.
Right.
And it's just, again, just a moment in time, man. Just a product of all the creative influences and design influences around that time. It's unbelievable to see the stuff like that.
Kind of an offshoot of what you said. It was the 70s. It was cool.
You're right.
And please do send me those links. I am definitely intrigued. Just not just with like game shows, but kind of like the production of it as a whole. Because I'm a huge fan of always like that behind the scenes stuff. I know I kind of mentioned that to you, but like getting to know kind of what went into, especially like game shows and such, like that is just a whole entire. I imagine that's a whole entire rabbit hole on its own.
I'm telling you, it really is. It really is. It's almost, they're almost dreamy. They're almost like, how did this exist? You know what I mean?
I mean, I know you personally tried to get as much involved with it, not just being a contestant on it, but through Buzzard Blog, you guys almost got or you at least got a game show concept to be optioned out. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I've never told that story.
I'm waiting to hear the story.
So this was 2014. Okay. 2014. The year prior, I was a contestant on a show called The Chase on Game Show Network. And in the process of becoming a contestant and taping that show, I got to be pretty good friends with a guy named Bob Bowden, who was the producer of The Chase, also had a hand in creating Game Show Network back in the day, in an indirect way, responsible for a lot of what makes me who I am today. And, it's always been a privilege to know this guy. I was at a point, Nathan, where I was really depressed. I had been unemployed for like 9 months. I had just moved to Pennsylvania with the promise of being able to work on a proposed game show for VH1 that we taped the pilot for, never went anywhere. The network said no to it. And so I was stuck just trying to pick up the pieces. I really thought that was going to be my future. And nothing worked out. And I just, again, had been without a job for months and months. And at the same time, my buddy Corey texted me one day and he said, Mario Kart with trivia questions.
Ooh.
And I said, okay. And I thought about it because Corey and I have this habit of like, if we have an idea for something, we'll just text each other like the one sentence pitch for it. And then we'll just sort of work it. We'll toss it back and forth and turn it into a thing. So eventually we came up with this game called Sabotage. And Sabotage had like a spy motif to it. And it was 3 players answering questions. Every once in a while, they could use their points to buy sabotages, to buy things that would make the game more difficult for the people next to them for the next few minutes.
Okay.
And I was so proud of it. And I told Corey, I said, if we send this to Bob Bowden, I bet he would at least give us some advice. He would at least say, hey, this is a good idea. So I emailed Bob Bowden one day and I said, hey, Bob, suppose two of your handsome ex-contestants had an idea for a game show. What would they do with that? And within the hour, he emailed me and said, I would tell those handsome ex-contestants to call me. And he gave me his cell number. And so I called him. And as nervous as I've ever been in my life, Nathan, I pitched him the idea for the show over the phone, and he loved it. And we spent the next few months just like tweaking it and coming up with, different rules and stuff. And, well, what if this happens in the course of the game? What should we do then? And, just kind of working it into a really solid idea. And it came time for us to tape something. We had to like make an episode of the show. And so I got to live out my dream and host a game show for the creator of Game Show Network.
There you go.
And it was it was an unbelievable experience. I have the video of this. I have never shown anyone, Nathan. I will send you the link to this. But you have to promise not to show anyone.
Right. No, trust me. I can only imagine on top of a million other things, there might be some NDA lost in there, but I completely understand. And trust me, full discretion, I am not going to leak anything.
Oh, no, it's all good. It's not a legal thing. It's more like my shirt didn't fit and I don't want anyone to see that.
Oh, come on. You weren't trying to go for the vibe of like Mr. Fred's with this, big time production game show that you've wanted to host your entire life.
I'll tell you what, since you've seen Mr. Fred's Palette, I will tell you that this show had definite Mr. Fred's Palette vibes. We taped it in an old warehouse right outside of Philadelphia. Like that was our studio. I'll say I think you'll enjoy it. But anyway, he saw what we taped. He loved it, and through his production company, he started pitching the idea to different TV networks around the world. That it never went anywhere, but just the fact that we made it to that point, Dude, Nathan, in my life, like up to this point, dude, I have had so many experiences that just like blow my mind when I think about them. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you ever think about the people you've talked to for your show and the questions you've been able to ask and the insight you've been able to gain from these people that have been on your show? And you ever just sit there and think about it and like, holy shit.
Christian,
you know what I mean?
Every single time I mention this podcast and every single time I get some like feedback from someone tell me how much they love my podcast or what they've got from my podcast and such, like it's that moment that just kind of clicks. Because like if I think about it, like I've talked with people that have, again, been a part of like my childhood shows. I've been able to talk to people that make the art that I absolutely love, and getting to talk to them and really get to know some of them, be friends with some of them and such. Obviously, you could definitely attest to that with the fact that you've basically got to be as close to having a game show as you ever been, thanks to some of the connections and meeting some of the incredible people you have.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that if I had kids, which I don't think it's in the cards for me to have kids, but if I were to have kids, it would be one of the things that I would teach them as a sort of life lesson. You find the thing that you're most excited about and communicate that excitement to whoever you can in any way you can. Mm-hmm. And something will happen. Somebody will see that and go, let's give him a shot. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's happened in a lot of little ways in my life. It's happened in some big ways, but it's happened in a lot of little ways as well. But, people love when someone else is passionate about a thing. I love when somebody, and like I've explained about you being on my show, I love when people are passionate and when that passion comes through and you see like what this subject does to this person, how it makes them who they are and why they love it so much. Like, those are things that come through just from someone talking about how much they like game shows or how much they like animation or how much they like movies. And, that's one of the best things you could do in life is to just like convey that passion to everybody around you.
Oh, absolutely. And I can tell, trust me, just been the short time we've been talking alone, I could tell that there's a lot of love and passion with all these instances in your life and such. Like, goodness, you said yourself, sometimes you step back and be like, I imagine for you have to step back and be like, what the fuck did I do to deserve this? Sometimes,
yeah. Sometimes I think about it, and in the grand scheme of things, they're not incredibly significant experiences, but to me they are. To me, they're huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I think about it like what did I do? How did this happen?
I mean, I know one of the biggest instances you have is one of the ones that you recently released, and that is your audio documentary of Auld Lang Gone, the Lost Carmen Sandiego. I have to ask initially, when it comes to just this, what was kind of the seed for the production of this and being able to go down the rabbit hole of, is there a lost episode in the first place?
Well, it started as a written article series last year. I wrote it about a year ago, and I was home in the midst of lockdown, and I was still coming off that feeling of, I've been home for months. I should probably make something. I should probably be creative and exercise that part of my brain. And that's where the podcast Stranger Than Christian came about, and that's how this article series came about. I've been a patron of the online game show community for years and years and years. And, in that particular fandom, as I'm sure there exists in, fandoms related to things that you might be interested in, Nathan, there are rumors and there are things that people have seen that they can't talk about, and things that exist somewhere in the recesses of history that, are lost or rumored, and this was one of those. This rumor had been around for maybe like a decade or so.
Right.
And, bumming around the internet, I realized that there was never any real hard research done into the existence of this lost episode of Carmen Sandiego. It seemed to be one of these things that, people read and it just sounds so incredible and so cool that they decide to take it for face value. Mm-hmm. And, I said, I bet I could figure out whether this exists or not. And, writing the article was not only a lesson for myself in terms of like, I had been out of journalism school for years and years, but I can still write. I can still do research and be a journalist. Right. It was also a lesson in just how big Buzzr Blog had become. Oh, my buddy Corey started that from his computer in his room, 12 or 13 years ago. Now it's the #1 game show website in the world, and people from all over the game show universe consult this website and realizing how much clout the site had, and just realizing how far I had come as a writer and as a researcher and as a game show enthusiast, to the point where I can email these people and say, hey, I'm working on an article. Can you help me? And they say, yep. And that's it. Like I said in the documentary, like, these people did not have to give me the time of day.
Right.
But they did. And so, the articles came out incredible because I talked to all the right people, and all the right people got back to me. And, so this year, to celebrate not only the 1-year anniversary of the articles, but the 30-year anniversary of the premiere of the original Carmen Sandiego on PBS, I produced a retelling of those articles. It's more of an audio documentary. Everybody who participated in the research for it, everyone who emailed me back then, lent me their voices for use in this thing. And so I got to star in a documentary alongside Mark Summers from Double Dare, which is pretty cool. And so, yeah, it's available on all the major streaming services. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on Google, it's on all that stuff. Buzzrblog.com as well. It's called Auld Lang Gone, the Lost Carmen Sandiego. And it's probably, other than my podcast and my marriage, the thing I'm proudest of in my life right now.
Absolutely. Christian, I'm not going to lie to you. I've listened to that documentary at least like 10 times at this point.
Jeez, thank you so much.
Because
thank you. That's amazing.
I definitely want to say this just right off the bat. It's one of those, like, actually like listening to it and hearing kind of the rabbit hole you went down, but also like the way you told the story. It wasn't just like a good investigative piece on, what could potentially be a lost episode, whether or not it's there. It wasn't just, a good information on the backstory of Carmen Sandiego and all the people involved with that and whatnot. It was, in my opinion, a good love letter to game shows and the power that they have as a whole. Because like you talking about how you were influenced by both the show and just game shows as a whole, like inserting little tidbits about you, like going to the library and such, getting the original cast and crew and such, like on as many as you can to be a part of that and to show kind of the love that they exude like for this program and showing kind of how game they were for this entire experience and such. The little bit at the end that you had after the actual documentary, like that's one of the most touching pieces I've heard in any sort of media, not just what you've produced. Like it is a great representation of the power of game shows as a whole, and I appreciate you taking the time to actually make it a reality.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that part at the end was actually me and, well, but that was me and the original host of the show, who was an incredibly cool guy and was very helpful in terms of, he jumped on a record session with me and just said, I will say whatever you need me to say, and just gave me everything. And I was able to talk to him while we were recording, and I was able to ask him questions about working on the show and just what that experience was like and what it means to him now. Because now we're in the midst of this whole nostalgia boom where everything old is new again, and we're seeing a new Legends of the Hidden Temple, and we're seeing a new Double Dare, and we're seeing a new this and a new that, and for the people who participated in that stuff way back when, it has to bring up a lot of surreal feelings for those things to suddenly become popular again, for that cycle to come back around. And so, yeah, he had a lot of really cool things to say about that type of stuff. And he was just really cool to talk to.
I'm surprised you didn't. I don't know how much of that you actually recorded, but you should probably save that for a future episode, Stranger Than Christian. I'm joking.
Listen, I will do something with it. We talked for about half an hour total.
Oh wow!
But I have plans. I have plans. Believe me.
Okay. I mean, nevertheless, like I loved that documentary just as a whole, just all that you put into it, all that was involved. From the people people that I imagine are extremely important, as a whole, like, Mark Summers, the original host, your wife, including all of them as a part of it, was absolutely incredible to see to hear the finished product, nevertheless.
Yeah, that was one of the cool things, was being able to involve people that I know in it. So like my wife was in it. A lot of people who read Buzzer Blog, I solicited voices from them. And these people were so excited to be part of it, and it was just, I really just kind of got the whole team together on it, and that felt really cool to, because I feel like, when you're a fan of something really narrow, when you have a very esoteric, narrow interest, it's easy to automatically assume that people won't understand it. And as a result, I think a lot of people who are really into something very narrow or, uncommon, they get defensive, and it's hard to truly understand what that type of stuff means to a person like that, because they'll never let you in. I've always wanted to be accessible, and I've always wanted my passion for television, my passion for game shows, my passion for broadcasting. I've always wanted to be accessible in that. I want to let people in. I want people to understand. I want to at least help you try to understand. If you don't, that's fine. I'm not going to force you, but I'm an open book in that way. Like I want you to see how these things affect my life. And so, I've always been about getting people involved and, and just sharing that love with as many people as possible. So to have all those people help me out was a definite realization of that.
Oh, absolutely. It's more or less just like my mentality when it comes to just any of my passions. It's one of those, I'm not going to force anything onto you, but if you're curious, I'm more than willing to welcome you in with open arms. So
Of course. And listen, that's the way to be, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I know another interest that you had that we kind of teased that a little bit is hip hop as well, and we kind of divulged into that whenever we were talking on your show. But I just have to ask, what is it about hip hop that like gets you going as well?
That to me is just good music, man.
Yeah.
And that, goes back to my dad as well. When my dad was an art teacher in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which, if you'll pardon the expression, Bridgeport was the hood in many, many ways. And my dad, one of the genius things my dad did in that part of his career was he adapted to those surroundings. Okay. And as a result, he became something like a father figure to a lot of these kids. Mm-hmm. And part of his like part of the appeal of his class was that he was a little younger. He understood that sort of urban dynamic. He was the only teacher with a stereo system in his room, and kids used to bring him tapes, and he played tapes during class. My dad was actually the first one to teach me that if you take masking tape and put it over the holes on a cassette tape, you could record over it. And that changed my life in many, many ways. But it was my dad's art classes at Wilbercross High in Bridgeport that put me on to hip hop. And, this was back when my dad used to bring me to his classes once in a while. I was 3 or 4 years old. So we're in 1993, 94, like the golden age of hip hop. And so I grew up listening to a lot of this stuff, a lot of EPMD, a lot of Biggie, a lot of Main Source, a lot of just like East Coast hip hop. And that just kind of planted itself in my brain. And it wasn't until years later that I took the J7 bus to the Connecticut Post Mall and bought Kanye West College Dropout, brought it home, locked myself in the room, and listened to it 4 times in a row, beginning to end. And I emerged from that room a hip hop fan. Like I was a true fan of it. And that was the first time I had ever purchased music to own, myself.
Right.
I had always grown up kind of listening to the radio and kind of hearing bits and pieces here and there. And then the internet, once in a while, I'd download like a song on LimeWire or whatever. But, that was a transformative experience for me. And, that music brought me to all kinds of other genres. I mean, you listen to Kanye, especially back then when he was real sample based. And you start discovering the music that he sampled, and you realize that this hip hop is made of disco and jazz and soul and old Negro spirituals, and and those each of those types of music are like whole universes in and of themselves. Right. And then those are connected, and then and it just really shaped how I enjoyed music. But it all started with hip hop.
It really opens up like just a door of possibilities and different examples of music and such. And Kanye is probably like the best example of that, especially with that College Dropout tape or whatnot. I actually have that CD in my car. But
it's a classic, man. And that, and I feel like you and I maybe relate to it in a different way, because College Dropout was a realization of that like do-it-yourself aesthetic. I mean, this guy made all the beats by himself, wrote all the lyrics by himself, came up with the marketing plan, the art for the album. It was just a complete product of his creative vision, and I identified with that to a certain degree. And that was honestly one of the moments in my life, maybe even the first moment in my life, where I realized I can make all of this on my own. Yeah. If I have a good laptop and I have time to spare and I have the energy to do it, I could make something like that. I could make an album, I could make a show, I could make a game show, like all these things just like combined. I was like, holy shit, I could do any of this stuff on my own. I don't need anyone else.
You just need to just do it more than anything else, because it
just need to drive. Yeah,
because at the end of the day, and this is something I've talked about with previous guests before, like especially if it's something that you want, well, if no one else is gonna do it for you, fuck it, do it yourself.
That's the way to do it, especially with the internet, man. You know what I mean? Like that, and like that was a big game changer for me, realizing that. And this is going back to when I was working on Sabotage with Corey and Bob. Realizing that I was able to fulfill a lifelong dream of hosting a game show that was going to be screened in Los Angeles, California. I did that all from my bedroom in Lancaster, fucking Pennsylvania. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding? That's the future, man. I do not have to move to Hollywood to pursue this. If this is what I want to do, I can do it on my fucking computer. I can make it myself.
Exactly.
Who else do I need?
Exactly. I mean, especially nowadays, especially in the past year or two alone, with how everything has just basically gone digital, it's more than reinforced that at this point.
Really, it really has. We are in the midst of a creative renaissance right now.
Yes,
with everybody realizing that they have. Oh, my wife dropped a fucking big spoon out in the kitchen. You hear that?
I heard that.
Where's that shit? That's her putting the fucking dishes away. She's gonna yell at me for not putting them away. It's fine.
I'm leaving that in as well.
Good. Leave it in.
No,
leave it in.
But yeah, like you said, like we are definitely in the middle of a creative renaissance, and especially nowadays with the internet basically giving us whatever supplies that we kind of really need to make what we want happen. What better time than now, right?
You know Eric Andre?
Yes, I love Eric Andre.
So you know he created the pilot of the Eric Andre show. He filmed everything himself and then downloaded a copy of Final Cut Pro off of Pirate Bay and installed it on his computer and edited his pilot himself. That's how he got his show.
I'm not surprised by that, honestly. I really am
amazing, right?
Right. And look where he is now. He's one, like, when people think of like obscure comedy, more or less, he's probably the biggest name out there at the moment.
Oh, he's the man. He is the man.
He is the man. Now, obviously, you know, with all these different influences that we've talked about and all the different stuff that you've had your hands in, it's kind of been a giant culmination. What is the word I'm looking for? A culmination of all these different aspects of how you grew up into quite possibly your biggest project to date, and that is your podcast, Stranger Than Christian. How did this concept even come to be in the first place for you?
Well, you know, that was something that I had been thinking about for a long time. I had been working at the front desk of a hotel in Lancaster for a while, and one of my favorite aspects of that job is being able to meet people from all over the world. Lancaster has a huge it's very tourist driven. People come to see the Amish and see the farms and see the shops and, you know, try the food and all that. And as a result, people really from all over the world come to Lancaster. And I was meeting them, and it was really great. And I wanted more. I wanted more of a connection to these people than just like the 2 minutes it takes them to check in. Like I wanted to get to know these people. Right. And, I realized, again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, the idea that if I want to make something, I can do it myself. And I was listening to some podcasts, and I wasn't like a huge fan of what I was listening to. Mm-hmm. A lot of it was very self-aware and very, almost too polished for me. Right. I was the kid who grew up making Mr. Fred's palette with my dad, so I had this appreciation for, rough media. And so I said, I wonder if I could do this and have the only elements of this show be me, the person I'm talking to, and our microphones. Yeah. And that's it. And I'm like, what if the first word of every episode was hello? Mm-hmm. And that's how it starts. There's no plan, there's no script, there's no nothing. And of course, a lot of people say that, I'll make a podcast, it should be me and my friends talking about whatever we want. And that more often than not doesn't go as well as it sounds. Right. But I thought by focusing on the idea that these are complete strangers. I've never had a conversation with any of these people before I'm talking to them on the show. Mm-hmm. I thought that would provide enough intrigue that, like, okay, maybe somebody would listen to this week after week after week. And so, excuse me for 1 second. I don't want to burp on my microphone again.
I understand.
Yeah. And so I thought that would provide a little more intrigue, and maybe somebody would want to listen week after week after week. And so I made about 4 episodes, and I was really nervous to make these episodes, Nathan. Like, I remember the first one I ever did, I was freaking out because I had no inclination that this would go well. I only felt like maybe this would be kind of fun,
right?
But I had no idea if the other person would go for it. I had no idea if I had the skills to hold the conversation. And I was so nervous. I remember finding, I had my Wii U hooked up to my TV, and I opened the YouTube app and I searched for waves crashing on beach 10 hours. And I played it on the TV. And whenever I had my laptop set up and my microphone, whenever I got nervous, I just stared at the beach.
There you go.
And that's how I got through like my first episode. And it turned out that people were really excited to just have a conversation the way people used to have a conversation on the phone back in the day. Like, there's a certain sort of intimacy you get when, 1, you're not looking at the person you're talking to, and 2, that other person is letting you talk. It's very rare that as humans we have conversations these days where one person isn't actively trying to get out of the conversation or steer it back to themselves or otherwise kind of tune you out.
Yeah.
So I realized that, and it's funny because everything in my life creatively would lead me to this point where if you're going to be a broadcaster, you have to always know the right thing to say, and you always have to have the right response and be funny and be witty and be clever. But it turns out that the best episodes of these, at least in my mind, are the ones where I say relatively little compared to the person I'm talking to.
Oh, yeah.
If I give them the episode, I give them the show, like that's what it's about, you know. And of course, I try to relate it to myself sometimes. I try to, you know, if we have some shared experiences, I think it's interesting to have a conversation or an interview where the person who's interviewing is also sharing of themselves. Right. But you know, at the end of the day, each episode belongs to the person it's named after. Like the episode about Nathan was like, that was about you. Like that was you.
Right.
You know?
Oh no.
So anyway, yeah. So I made the 4 episodes, and I started working full time at another hotel, and I just kind of fell by the wayside. Then lockdown happened, and I got sent home from work, and I was home and not talking to anybody, and I missed people. Right. And so I ordered a fucking microphone and soundproof foam off Amazon, and I built the studio. I said, I'm going to do the show again. And here we are 80 episodes later.
Yeah, goodness. Like, it's been quite a journey for you. I know you said, like, your personal favorite ones are obviously the ones where the guests kind of take more. Is there any, like, highlight guests that you can think of other than, you know, saying the kind words earlier about me?
Well, other than Nathan, I don't know, man. That's a short list. Like every episode, it's hard to pick one favorite because I like every episode in its own way. I mean, there have been episodes where, you know, I will start crying. The guests will start crying. Like we'll realize we've had these like experiences, or you know, we'll bring up something that's happened in our life, and you know, I'll start talking about just how much I've always wanted to be a broadcaster, and it just naturally makes me emotional. Those are very special to me because I think that that's a type of emotion that can't really exist in most media. Like you can't write that. You know, so I like those. It's hard to pick one because again, every episode just has something special about it. And every episode to me is just a reaffirmation of that idea that like, if I want to be a broadcaster, I can do it myself. Boom. I'm a broadcaster now. And that's how it goes. You know what I mean? Like every time I'm able to do an episode, it's like just like a reaffirmation of that.
Oh no, absolutely. I was gonna say, as someone that listens to the episode, listens to just about every single episode, I totally understand where you're coming from. Especially the fact that like each conversation is like unique on their own. I know for me personally, some of my favorite ones, like the number one for me is not even my own episode. It's listening to Jim McCrowd or Jim.
Jim McCrell. Yeah, he was a game show host back in the day.
Yeah, like listening to his story and just like the interactions that he had. Like it's incredible to like hear that kind of like fun, you know, almost like the throwback nostalgia that you were talking about earlier. But like on the flip side, fellow podcast host Honey Leavitt, her episode, like hearing just how dark and deep like it got for her at times with how she was dealing
what an
mentally.
Incredible story that was, right?
It absolutely was. Ash, listening to her story as well, like listening to how like ghosts had like affected her and all this, you know, how it's a big part of her life and such, and how you were able to relate to that. And again, on the flip side, like talking to Patrick, the former wrestler who knew your gig from the start and was trying to go a hello from you instead of the other way around.
That bastard.
Like hearing just all these incredible stories from strangers, nevertheless, like if nothing else, it really showcases just how incredible it is for a person that, if given the opportunity, how incredible individuals can be just as a whole. Like I can imagine how it is for you going on this journey.
And that was going back to talking about the love of game shows, the fact that these were regular people doing extraordinary things. Mm-hmm. Like that was a huge influence for me. And so I feel like in that way, the podcast is a definite, you know, like you used the phrase earlier, a love letter to the type of entertainment I grew up around. I mean, the show itself is a celebration of regular, everyday people, mm-hmm. you know, people that would not have the spotlight otherwise. They just exist on this earth. And, you know, for an hour, they get to talk about themselves. They get to be the star of something. Yeah, so that was a definite influence as well when I was thinking about the show.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you said before, it's been 80 episodes so far. You've talked to Lord knows however many people from just about every single continent. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe not Antarctica, but that's a whole different story.
We're getting there. Whenever I see like an Ask Me Anything from one of these like Antarctica researchers, I want to say like, hey, do you want to be on a podcast?
Yeah, there you go.
But I feel like they're probably doing more important things than than want to be on a podcast.
You never know. But nevertheless, like throughout this entire journey, like I don't know what your mentality. I mean, I know what your mentality was whenever you started, but with this journey, has it gone kind of the way you expected, or has it surprised you in one aspect for another, just with the people you've been able to bring on?
Well, it just surprises me that the idea works. And it surprises me week after week because, talking to a complete stranger, you're not obligated to tell them anything.
Yeah.
But to a certain degree, I feel like one of the roles that has been chosen for me in this life is the role of somebody who will listen to whoever wants to talk. And I am the person that people will come to when they want to say something. I'm the person that people confide in. And, I don't know how many times it's happened where I'm talking to a guest on my show and they say, oh my God, I've never told anybody that. And little moments like that, like I live for that because that is a very sacred trust. And for that to work on a podcast, a weekly podcast, it really shouldn't work. Like when you think about it, it really shouldn't. Because who the hell am I to these people and who are they to me? Why am I telling them anything about my personal life? Why are they telling me anything? Why are they even meeting me online?
Right.
It goes against everything we learned about the internet when we were younger. Like never talk to a stranger online because you never know who they are.
Yeah.
And, you look at it now and it's like that is the foundation of so many of the close personal friendships I've made in my life. Not to mention the people that I've met through this show.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, trust me, I've gone through a bit of a laundry list myself with the people that I could not get enough of the conversation for. I mean, I think you and me are kind of the same when it comes to, like, with every single episode, you can't really think of, like, bad episodes because they're all unique and entertaining in their own instance. And because every individual person has a unique and interesting story that they have to tell in one aspect for another. And I think you do a great job not just showcasing that, but keeping the conversation going to reinforce that story for each individual person as well.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very humbled that you listen to the show as frequently as you do. It really means a lot.
I mean, I got to be a part of the podcast network because of it, so I think that's a win for everyone involved, right? Anyway,
that is true. And I was amazed by that as well. I saw your name when Joanna had mentioned that we had a new show on the network. It was unbelievable.
I was honestly surprised how easy it was for me to be a part of the podcast network. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, you pretty much just have to show interest.
Yeah, you know what? Fair enough. Because like I said, whenever I hopped on to your show, like I either wanted to like help out the network because you were a part of it to help you out, or just be a part of it in one aspect for another. I'm glad I got to save a little bit of money, but
absolutely much cheaper this way.
It's fairly cheaper. But Christian, we've been talking a whole lot about all sorts of different aspects of your love and your career to this point and what you've been able to produce. But I want to go a little bit higher thinking with this next question. I want to give you more or less the dream scenario. Let's say I am Big Shot Mr. Moneybags and I'm like, look, Christian, everything you've been able to produce is absolutely outstanding, and we know that if given the opportunity, you could produce something absolutely amazing for us. I have connections to anyone and everyone in the world, and I have more money than should be possible. Jesus Christ, the IRS should be chasing after me by this point. What in the world? If given the opportunity, what would be the dream Christian Carrion project?
My podcast in front of an audience with a band and a desk.
There you go.
Same type of guests, total strangers, and I would want to have the same types of conversations, but in a glitzier, more talk show like setting. I think the juxtaposition of that type of environment with the types of conversations I have on the show would be really, really, really interesting.
I think it would be interesting as well. Not only just like, obviously giving the guests like the same as before, but also like how much the audience getting that direct feedback from you. That would be an interesting experience on its own. Also, if you need like an Andy to your Conan in this situation, I'd be more than happy to sign up for it. Get me involved.
Of course, man. Of course. Christian and Nathan. Hell yeah.
There you go. There we go.
Absolutely. I'll have my people call you.
Duly noted. You got my contact info, right?
I sure do.
I'd hope so. But sadly, let's come down from the dream scenario a little bit. Let's get back to reality, sadly. And I'll ask the ever so generic question. Where do you hope to see yourself 5 to 10 years from now?
I think I'm on a path where I'm just trying to be a better person every day. I think that I want to constantly be working on myself. I never want to like rest on my laurels. I always want to consider what I could be doing better, what I could be improving. And so I think as long as I stay on that path and I keep finding contentment in the things that make me happy, my marriage, my creativity, my job. 'Cause I'm very content with my life right now. As long as I maintain that contentment, I don't think it matters where I am in a few years. I think that wherever I am, I'll make it happen.
Well, good. I mean, especially if, at the end of the day, you should be happy with the path that you're on anyway. So, I mean, if this is the path you're happy with, who are we to stop you? We're certainly going to be happy right alongside you. So,
I hope so.
Absolutely. As we wind down the conversation, Christian, I just have one last question that I want to ask real quickly. Obviously, you're deeply entrenched in art and entertainment in one aspect or another. It's basically been part of your use for as long as you can remember. How important is art, not just for you, but for the world as a whole?
If you look at life the right way, everything is made of art. Art is, elemental to our experience. Things that don't necessarily present themselves as art can be art if you look at them the right way. And so, art is important to me in that it gives me more than one perspective on the world. It lets me look at things in a different way. I think that the art that I've experienced throughout my life sort of informs that. Art is just so important to my life, and it's something that's always surrounded me. And I think that I'm a more well-rounded person because of that.
Well, there you go. I can't think of a better way to word it myself. That's all the questions I have for you, Christian. I know I've already showered you with a whole bunch of praise, but I'm going to shower you with a little bit more because it's my podcast. I do whatever the fuck I want.
Oh, God. All right. Hold on. Let me get comfy.
Are you good? Nice and comfortable?
Yep.
Christian, I've already showered you with a whole bunch of how much I appreciate your show, how much I listen to every single episode, partially because, I love what you're bringing to the table in one aspect for another. It seems like every time I've seen something that you've been able to produce, it's been like super duper high quality, even whenever that probably wasn't the mark. Or if it was just simply, trying to get the work. Oh, I'm recording right now, yes. Sorry, that
he's praising me. Open the fucking door.
To be fair, I think I forgot to put the do not disturb, I'm recording sign up on my door, so that was partially on me.
That's okay.
Anyways, deep breath. Let me get back to what I was saying.
No worries.
Christian, like I said, I've been just everything that you've basically been producing at this point is absolutely outstanding and high quality, whether or not that was the intention or not. Every single conversation I'm intrigued with, not just the guests that you bring on, but what you bring to the table in that one. Auld Lang Gone, I could shower you with so much more about that, but at the end of the day, Christian, I really appreciate the fact that someone as wholesome and as honest as you is getting the opportunity to produce the stuff that you want, because the stuff that you want to make, the stuff that you get to showcase to the world is just absolutely outstanding. I cannot get enough of what you've been able to do, and I seriously anticipate whatever you may be doing next, because I know it's going to be good at the end of the day. So thank you for taking the time to do this stuff, to showcase yourself to the world and to bear your soul out at times, because it's noted, and I get as much of an honest perspective of you every single time you push something out, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you for what you do.
Well, listen, I hope to live up to that praise. Thank you very much, and I similarly appreciate everything you do. For somebody to appreciate art and to appreciate creativity the way that you do, we need more of that. And so, thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it as well. Yeah, there you go. I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you so much for those kind words.
Well, we appreciate each other.
Appreciation goes around for everyone. There you go.
It sure does.
I do want to ask real quickly. So it's been, what was it? It's been since June since the last time we really talked. And I know you've probably had some time to lament on our conversation and whatnot. You already asked the question, but is there any other questions you may have had for me that you didn't get a chance to ask whenever I appeared on the podcast?
Yes, I would ask you, you're interested in animation and you're interested in filmmaking and all these things. What led you to the medium of podcasting to convey your love of those things? Because, from a logical standpoint, you might say that like somebody who's really into animation would want to draw, would want to create something visual. What about this medium helps you convey your love of the things that you're into?
Well, I think, well, part of it is my own art skills on its own, which I need to work on them very, 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 very much to get up to the part. But that's aside from the point. I think the medium of podcast really lends itself to animation and to art in the aspect of, like whenever you learn about something is coming out, it's usually something that is told to you in one aspect for another. Whether it be on social media, Disney telling you, hey, you should watch this new thing, or whether it be like a close friend of yours like telling you, hey, did you get to hear this incredible new CD that I'd never even heard about before, not too long ago and such. It's the conversation aspect of a podcast that I truly love. And the fact that, for a lot of these people, especially online, like the most they'll get is to post something on Twitter or Instagram and have the couple of minutes of time before it gets replaced by something else along the way, get replaced by, some viral tweet, with a meme of Pikachu or something along the lines of that. Because that's how the internet is. Like, at least that's how social media is. Just kind of, it's there and it's gone. Like, instantly like that. With podcasts, like, it could be as long or as short as a person wants it to be, but more or less, like, especially when it's a conversation like this or like your show, it really lets the artists themselves truly showcase that passion that they have for the products that they're working on. I recently had a guest not too long ago, Jabberwick. I got a chance I was introduced to them by my producer, Maria Tipsy J. Hartz. And the fact that she was able to, looking at, Tipsy recommended it to me, I instantly fell in love just by looking at the stuff. But then actually getting to sit down and talk with Jabberwick, and hearing the amount of time that they invested in the lore of this background for this simple little image, or hearing the road that led them up to this point with love for animation and stop motion Leica Studios and such, that gave me a whole new appreciation for their art than just the simple glance. And I think that with podcasts it really lends itself to show the true nature and the true love that a person can have with their artwork.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer, Nathan.
I did not plan that either. That was something because that's just how I truly feel about it. It's one of those.
Well, yeah, and again, that's what makes you a great guest, also a great host, is that the passion for these things comes through, and you can't help but follow along and be engaged with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that question. That's a good question.
Of course.
If people at home don't already know, go ahead and plug yourself for the people at home.
Of course, yeah. Stranger Than Christian, complete, unrehearsed, spontaneous conversation with total strangers from all over the world. Every Saturday, there's a new episode on all the major streaming services. StrangerThanChristian.com, Twitter at StrangerThanC, and Patreon.com/StrangerThanChristian. And also check out Auld Lang Gone, the Lost Carmen Sandiego, again on all the major streaming services. And this one's at BuzzerBlog.com as well. Check it out.
Absolutely. And if you missed any links, I'll be sure to put them in the description below. So I got you covered.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Do you have any final words before we sign off?
Nothing other than this was an incredibly enriching experience, and it's really fun having this conversation from the other side and getting to answer some questions once in a while. I think you're doing a great job with your show. I appreciate all the kind words you had for me and what I'm doing, and keep rocking, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And I will say, if you ever need me for whatever, I don't know what I'd be useful for, but I'm a message away in one aspect for another. You know that we're in the same podcast network, the Apocalypse Podcast Network, so why not?
That's right. I would appreciate your help in anything I do, Nathan. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you once again, Christian. And for the people at home, all I have left to say is hasta luego, amigos.
Tell me what's wrong, tell me sparks in motion. Sing me a song, tell me your eyes can all open. Show me it all, pick me up in the car you drove when you used to call. Show me it all.
Thanks for listening to the Apocalypse Podcast Network. For more great podcasts, go to apocalypsepodcastnetwork.com. And remember, every time you support one of our sponsors, you're supporting the podcast you just heard.
This was a podcast that I truly was really, really, really excited to have, because Christian has been a major influence on me when it comes to how I want to go forth with my podcast and such, and how I want to interact with others. Because if you have not taken the opportunity to go and listen to Stranger Than Christian, I highly encourage you do, especially after listening to this episode of my podcast. Just the way that he handles a conversation session, the way that the conversation can flow a million different ways, is something that I truly love and admire, and I want you guys to love and admire that as well. If you're here for this podcast because you enjoy the kind of conversation that I have with artists, but the way that just kind of naturally flows and such, then Christian's podcast is the perfect example of that. And Christian, if you are listening, yes, I am showering you with even more praise than before. I really do appreciate your podcast, man. And I know it's not always going to be consistently out, because you need to take care of yourself first and foremost, and that is very important. But just know that whenever you do come back, whenever you do, whatever you do forward, I'm going to be there to support you in one aspect or another. I don't care what happens. You are truly someone that I appreciate from the bottom of my heart, doing what they are doing and doing what they love, no matter what restraint there may or may not be. It's that Kanye mentality that we kind of discussed. I just, this was a conversation that I was just glad to have more than anything else. Yeah. Seriously, I don't know if you kind of got that kind of vibe from the way we were talking, but talking with him is just, it's like talking to a good friend, which I consider him a good friend at this point. For God's sakes, I'm part of his podcast network. Who am I kidding? I hope you guys are doing well. Seriously, it's getting close to the end of 2021, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because 2021 was a weird year for me. But I will say, with the upcoming weeks that I've got going on, I've got some good podcasts for you guys. I got some interesting ones. I've got some firsts and such. I'm hopefully getting some good opportunities as well because of this podcast. I recently divulged on Twitter how much this podcast really does mean to me. The fact that I've been able to stick with something consistently and know that there is a good variety of people that love and appreciate it. That's just, it's something that I can't get enough of, and I thank each and every one of you for being a part of that. I've said it a million times before, and I'm going to keep saying it for as long as I do this. Because without you guys, and without the guests that I bring in week and week out, like, without them, it would just be me yelling into a void, and no one would be listening to it, And as much as I do like talking about myself and such, let's be honest, I'm not exactly the most interesting person out there. No, but, like, the people that I'm bringing on are absolutely interesting a million times over, and that's why I want to make sure that they're highlighted and given that opportunity. And, the guests are one aspect, but you guys continuing your support in one aspect for another, like, I really do appreciate it. Like, the most base level support that I'm getting right now, at this point, helps this podcast keep going in one aspect for another. Personally, I would love for it to go further, Like, I want to see people wanting to be on this podcast. I want to see, like, out there on the internet, like, love for this podcast. I want to see people ripping the merch. Because I'm not just shouting about the merch just so I can make some money off of it. Fuck, I've done nothing but lose money since I've started this podcast, okay? Like, the merch should be an extension of that, because the people that I am bringing on to help make some of that stuff, that's it's me being nitpicky. But at the end of the day, if all you can do is just listen and keep showing a little bit of love, I'm not going to complain one bit, because I appreciate you guys for all that you've done so far, and I truly cannot wait for you guys to see or hear what's next, because I'm having fun with this. I truly have fun with every single conversation that I have. No matter how big or small, how long or how short the conversation is. I truly have some fun. And I hope you guys are having fun with me as well. So what should be the final words of today? I'll say this. Kind of like what Christian was talking about. Kind of like, some of the people that we admire, like Kanye and such. Something that I've established many times over. If there's something you absolutely love, or something that you want to see, but no one else is making it, what's stopping you from doing it? Go out there and just do it. Do what you love. Go out there and make something absolutely incredible, because Jesus Christ, more than just people that want to see the same thing, you don't know how much of a relief it is on you to finally release something like that, to create something like that, and to see the end product and have so much pride in it. Have pride in what you do. So just go out there and do it. Just do it, guys. I know you can. I believe in you. I have faith in you. I know you can do this. I know you can do this.